Hello, all. Happy Monday. We're coming in on the end of the semester. Thank goodness. I'm finishing, believe it or not, the grading. I have it. There's a big pile down here. Well, maybe not so big, but um, 10 o'clock. I've let you know already. I'm working on finishing you guys first, and I'll move to 9, then 8, then uh, international relations. But that isn't a concern of you and American national government. But I wanted to start this week out on a real positive note. And I saw this uh, on Facebook because, you know, what else do we have to do when we're not grading papers or uh, recording these video lectures? But I just thought this really just encapsulated the best, the absolute best that this country can be and that this country has to offer. So this guy sent a letter. I've shown you Governor Cuomo before, but this guy sent a letter to Governor Cuomo, and I listened to it. I don't know. It touched me. I hope you like it.
That I received that just sums it up. Dear Mr. Cuomo, I seriously doubt that you will ever read this letter, as I know you are busy beyond belief with the disaster that has befallen our country. We are a nation in crisis. Of that there is no doubt. I am a retired farmer hunkered down in northeast Kansas with my wife, who has but one lung and occasional problems with her remaining lung. She also has diabetes. We are in our 70s now, and frankly, I am afraid for her. Enclosed, find a solitary N95 mask left over from my farming days. It has never been used. If you could, would you please give this mask to a nurse or doctor in your state? I have kept 4 masks for my immediate family. Please keep on doing what you do so well, which is to lead. Sincerely, Dennis and Sharon. A farmer in northeast Kansas. His wife has one lung and diabetes. He has 5 masks. He sends 1 mask to New York for a doctor or a nurse, keeps 4 masks. You want to talk about a snapshot of humanity. You have 5 masks. What do? Do you keep all 5? Do you hide the 5 masks? Do you keep them for yourselves or others? No. You send 1 mask to New York to help a nurse or a doctor. How beautiful is that? I mean, how selfless is that? How giving is that? You know, that's the nursing home in Niskayuna that sent 100 ventilators down to New York City when they needed them. It's that love, that courage, that generosity of spirit that makes this country so beautiful and makes Americans so beautiful. And it's that generosity of spirit, for me, makes up for all the ugliness that you see. Take 1 mask. I'll keep 4.
And seriously, how beautiful is that? That guy, wife has diabetes, 1 lung. If the coronavirus got there, I mean, she'd probably be gone. But he still finds it within himself to send a mask to New York. I we need to take a minute, I think, just to be grateful for what we still do have in this quarantine. You know, that's what I took from it, and I just wanted to share that with you to start the week. But today we're going to be talking about natural law. Now, believe it or not, we've been talking about natural law all semester. I just haven't put a name to it. But we'll start, we'll come back to that. But we'll start here with this guy. Told you I can relate everything in this class back to England. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. This guy you see on the right, St. Thomas More, my favorite saint, patron saint of civil servants and politicians. He was the chancellor of King Henry VIII of England, the guy with the 6 wives that he beheaded a couple of them. And he was a good Catholic. He believed in the papal supremacy and that the Pope was Jesus's representative on earth, God's representative, excuse me, and everything he was supposed to do. But when King Henry, decided, and I'm giving you a real abridged version of this, that he wanted rid of his first queen, Catherine of Aragon. He split from Rome, founded his own church, which still exists to this day, the Anglican Church, declared himself supreme head, and granted himself that divorce from Catherine, married Anne Boleyn. That didn't work out well. But this guy refused to swear, because he made everybody swear, King Henry, that the Pope wasn't the head of the church and that he, Henry VIII, was the supreme head of the church on earth. Thomas More wasn't having any of that. He wouldn't swear. Now, if you keep in the back of your mind, if you remember maybe from a European history class you took at ICC or in high school, what the mentality was regarding His Holiness the Pope back in the Middle Ages, the late Middle Ages, it was that he was truly God's representative. He spoke with God's tongue. He acted in God's name. He couldn't make a mistake. He was infallible. And many Catholics still believe that. I'm not making any judgment about the beliefs, but that's why he wouldn't swear. It ran counter to what Thomas More knew in his heart, what his faith told him was true. The king wasn't the head of the church because the Pope was. Why? Because God put the Pope in charge to do what he did. So Henry threw him in the Tower of London. If you ever go to England, that's a fun place to look around. I tried, but they weren't letting people anymore into the cell that they held him in, because since he was declared a saint, nuns and other religious folk would come along, and they were actually like taking bits off the floor of the cell and things like that as holy relics. It was very, very interesting to me. But they put him on trial for treason. And as we know from our study of the Magna Carta and King John and all that, if the king wanted you to be found guilty, you were going to be found guilty. So Thomas More's treason trial, it was just a show trial. He knew he was going to lose. He was executed 3 days afterwards. He knew he was going to lose, and his alleged and proven act of treason here was silence. Because again, he refused to state affirmatively that Henry VIII was head of the church instead of the Pope, because that ran counter, in his mind, to the natural law. So no transcript really exists, that I've been able to find anyway, in full of what transpired at this trial. This is Anne Boleyn, by the way. But some excerpts of it survive. He said in this trial, "Some men say the earth is round, and some say it is flat. If it is round, can the king's command flatten it? And if it is flat, can Parliament make it round?" He's not asking this question seriously. He knows the answer to both of those questions is no. He's trying to speak to us. He's speaking for posterity. He knows he's going to die. He knows it's a show trial. He knows nobody's going to, be really listening to what he has to say. But he's trying to show us, he's trying to demonstrate here the natural law. He's arguing that just as, these unnatural things can't happen, the King of England, even the King of England, can't speak a flat earth into existence. He's arguing also, he's showing us that there are restraints on government. There are restraints on the people in the government. Now, if anybody needs this lesson at the moment, it's our government in the United States, I think. But these restraints come from nature. There's a natural order to things which we as masters of the earth, though we may be, can't change about things. And this is no way novel. No way in the world is this a novel argument. Again, the founders looked at this stuff. The founders of our country studied these things. And this is a theoretical argument I'm giving you. Students have poked holes in the natural law argument I've been giving since day one. I understand that. But this is what the founders were looking at. It was made by Plato, St. Augustine, Aristotle, John Locke, St. Thomas Aquinas, one of my other favorites, the patron saint of teachers, Thomas Jefferson, Justice Clarence Thomas on the Supreme Court now. Scalia was a little bit that way, Martin Luther King Jr. They all subscribed to this natural law theory, that there are natural constraints on the government, that the government isn't supposed to be an all-encompassing Leviathan thing. This is really why our country's founding document, the Constitution, it's not even an eighth of an inch thick. If this was printed on a sheet of paper, a good 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, this wouldn't even be 5 pages. They recognized there were constraints. They recognized there were lines in the sand which the government should not cross. So there's natural law. We've been talking about natural law. The opposite of natural law is, going for the highlighter. Okay, yeah. Is positivism. Hint, hint on the final. Hint, hint. So there are about 6 different versions of what the natural law could mean. There are about 6 different versions of positivism, 4 different of the natural law. We're not going to talk about all of those. I can hear you all exhaling, thankfully. We're going to talk about one natural law, one definition of positivism. So natural law. What is natural law? I hear you ask. Our rights are knowable by the exercise of reason. All humans exercising reason will come generally to the same conclusion about what's right and wrong. All humans exercising reason will be exercising the freedom that comes from within us. We know we're the highest thing on the food chain. You know what's right, what's wrong. You know it's wrong to kill. You know it might be the right thing to do to help a little old lady cross the street. You know it's wrong to steal what isn't yours. You know it's the right thing to do to give a mask to somebody who doesn't have a mask during this current pandemic. You know this. Nobody has to tell you it's right and wrong to do these certain things. You know. It's right here. It comes from within you. It's our ability to develop our personalities. Speak as we wish. I bet you all have a friend or two who should be grateful they have the ability to speak as they wish and develop their personalities. Publish what we say. they all have their origins in natural law tradition. So natural law tradition has two different sources. And before I go any further, you guys believe whatever you believe. I mean, I pass no judgment. I make no judgment. I'm just explaining to you where this comes from. This isn't my opinion. These aren't necessarily my beliefs. I'm just explaining what this is and where this comes from. So there's a belief in the Almighty. The founders, up through today, there are people who believe that there's a triune God, the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, that created us. And he shares his greatest assets with us. We're made in his image. As he's perfectly free, we too are perfectly free. There are no constraints on God and what he can do. One doesn't have to believe in God, though, to accept this argument, although that is the original argument, really, for this. There's the human dignity aspect, since we are the most rational figures on the food chain. On the planet, we're the top of the food chain. We're the masters of the earth, really, because we have that importance of our position, since we are the top dogs on the planet. We have that importance and that dignity. We have to respect it, and we do respect it for the most part in each other. And either of these theories are going to get you the fact that our rights come from our humanity. And we certainly don't have a limited number of rights. And this is very important for you to remember, I fear, in the weeks and months and maybe years ahead. The government did not give us our rights. And they cannot take them away. They recognize this in the Constitution, the Founding Fathers. I'll talk to you about it in a few minutes. But that's a very important thing to remember. I ask, too many people seem to think this is the case. The government did not give you the right to speak freely. The government did not give you the right to protect yourself. The government cannot take those rights away. It's unnatural. So that is until you come to positivism, anyway, where all these things are possible. Posit, okay, articulating the law. Positivism says that the law is whatever the lawgiver says it is. So as long as it's articulated, written down, ratified, it's law. Doesn't matter. No matter who the lawgiver is. If it's the king in Saudi Arabia, the Pope in Rome, the Congress of the United States, Governor Pritzker and his executive orders, it's law. So like Congress says you can't give more than $2,300 to a political campaign. This is law because Congress wrote it down, the president signed it. It's the law of the land. But suppose Congress wrote a law that interfered with a natural law that we're talking about, like the freedom of speech. What then? Do we still have freedom of speech? Did freedom of speech just go the way of the dodo? Well, freedom of speech would have gone the way of the dodo bird under this positivism theory, if a state was run that way. And many states / countries are run that way, where their constitution reads the citizens may speak freely, the citizens may protect themselves, the citizens may da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And we, the government of Rwanda, of Yemen, of wherever, reserve the right to modify these rights. Well, that's just kind of the way the cookie crumbles there. So natural law, here is a chart that breaks it down for you. Based upon principles of truth, it's inherent to creation, harmonized with due to knowledge and understanding. It's universal. It exists and applies anywhere in the universe, regardless of location. Eternal and immutable. exists and applies for as long as the universe exists and cannot be changed. So man's laws are based upon dogmatic beliefs, constructs of the mind, complied with due to fear of punishment. And this is the big thing. Would we still have freedom of speech? Well, nominally not if we were living in a positivist society. The king might say we don't, so okay, we don't. Why do we comply with that? Well, the king, if he finds out we're speaking freely and we're maybe saying things that are critical, will send his soldiers and chop off our heads. That's the big thing that keeps this going. There are many stupid laws. I think we can all agree upon that. But we comply because of what will happen if we don't. Do any of you have $500 for a ticket? I don't either. Do any of you have $100 to pay to the police for whatever it is? Well, no, I don't have that to spare. I need to buy groceries. That's kind of what happens. So it differs with location based on the whim of the legislature, and the legislators, I should say, and changes with time. And we see this in this country. The wind blows right, the wind blows left, the laws change, the laws are modified, but it's this. Not all of that, but it's this. So if a law exists that says we don't have the freedom of speech, well, it depends on what you subscribe to. I happen to believe a lot in this. Just me. I'm not saying anybody else has to. But I think we would still have it. You just have to be a little more careful about what you said and where. So, did Congress take this into account when drafting the Constitution and drafting the Bill of Rights and all the amendments? Yeah, absolutely. Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. What's the most important word in there? They're not saying Congress shall grant freedom of speech. The right doesn't come from Congress. It's the word the. That's an articulation of the understanding of the natural law tradition. Sometimes I throw this in a test, so I'll highlight it and say maybe it'll be on there, maybe it won't. They recognized, they knew that freedom of speech pre-existed the government, any government. It comes from the natural law. It comes from within us. It's not the government's to give. It's not the government's to take away. It is within us. So the Declaration of Independence is also another great example of the natural law tradition. Mr. Jefferson certainly believed that our rights are inalienable, meaning they can't be separated from us. So the right to free speech, the right to protect myself and my wife and my home from an intruder, my right not to have soldiers forced in here on me against my will. These just kind of come with the package that is Jonathan Parker or any of you. There are also rights in the Constitution that come from both natural law and positivist tradition. But let's look at this real quick. Where is the natural law in here? Right at the beginning, right at the beginning. Self-evident truths. All men are created equal. They're endowed with certain unalienable rights by their Creator. That among these, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Governments are deriving their power from the consent of the governed. It's the right of the people to alter or abolish a government if it becomes destructive. You don't have to look far. Not at all. It's right in there. all the Declaration of Independence. It's a natural law thing. We're out of time. Come back in a second for part 2.